I am super excited about having our keynote speaker this year, and I want to give a special thanks to Jake Frank at Pastime and Rob Fox with Buckeye Dealer Consulting for sponsoring this year's keynote speaker. And without any further ado, I'd like to bring up Jake Frank to do the official introduction of our keynote speaker. Jake.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be here again this year. This is a great event, and we always look forward to it. It's very important, for our industry. We're also very happy to be sponsoring our keynote speaker again this year. So without any further ado, our speaker is a combat decorated U.S. Marine, the recipient of the Silver Star, the Bronze Star for Valor, and 2 Purple Hearts for wounds in action. From 1983 to 1986, he served as the U.S. government counterterrorism coordinator on the National Security Council staff. President Ronald Reagan described him as an American hero. Our speaker is the founder of a small business, an inventor with 3 U.S. patents, and a New York Times best-selling author. From 2001 until May of 2018, when he retired from Fox News, he was host of the network's award-winning War Story show, one of my personal favorites, the longest-running continuously broadcast military documentary series in television history. Despite all these accomplishments, he claims his greatest achievement is to be a God-fearing husband of 1, father of 4, and grandfather of 17. Please join me in welcoming America's foremost advocate for our military members and their families, Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North.
Thank you all. Thank you, Jake, for the kind intro. I just want you to know that the bio they gave you is 3 months old. I know that because I now have 18 grandchildren. Now, I just want you to know, it turns out that I know exactly what Jake does. And I just want you to know that I've been involved with GPS security solutions since 2001. I've been actively supporting NIADA for 51 years, half a century. And I want to explain a little bit. What Pastime does, for those of you who have not been looking at it carefully, is they use this GPS data, among other things, to protect assets. And I have long used GPS data to protect my assets. More than 60 embeds with U.S. troops overseas in this long war. Every combat vehicle, there was a gun, if it's got a gun on it, it's got what they call a Blue Force tracker in it. Among other things, it's supposed to identify all known friendly and enemy units in the vicinity of that vehicle. GPS data, right? I'd tell you more about it, but it's classified, and then I'd have to kill you all, so I don't want to get too deep into this. But what you're about to see on the screen is what happens when it doesn't work quite right. And this footage is from my helmet camera.
RPG. Stop! You all right? You all right, partner? Yeah, I'm good.
No one knew that was coming until it actually got fired. Now, half century plus with my connections with NIADA. According to USAA, and I checked last night, they have insured 33 vehicles that my wife and I have purchased over our 51 years of marriage. They list them. So I'm driving number 32. She's driving number 33. 21 of them have been used cars and trucks. Anyone want to guess who got the new cars? Yeah. You know, I told someone when we were talking earlier today, I said the most fun car I had for any length of time, we went through 3 Oldsmobile Auroras with that great big North Star engine. And I think I paid more in fines than I did for the car because it was such a great automobile. I wish they were still making them. Anybody, any of you guys dealers you got one? I'll come see you because it's a great automobile. I used to keep on the back, it's a sedan, and I used to keep on the back window every police car that had stopped me over the years. I'd ask him for the hat in addition to the ticket. Some days he just gave me the hat. Now, according to the invite that I got from Jake and the folks that very kindly invited me, I'm supposed to talk about helping small business owners be confident in their leadership skills. And let me start with this. How many of you have ever served in the Armed Forces of the United States, any branch at any time? Look at this. Friends, those are American heroes right there. Thank you. It's easy for me to talk about that, and those of you who just raised your hands will understand this. I spent 3/4 of a century in the company of American heroes and great leaders. I've learned a little bit about leadership. My mom and dad met in 1941 at Fort Niagara in upstate New York when he was a second lieutenant. They met at a USO dance. They got married in 1942, and I was born in 1943 in San Antonio, Texas, at Fort Sam Houston. 75 years ago today, and I've kind of got his calendar down pretty well. My dad's 95th Infantry Division, part of Patton's 3rd Army, was closing in on the Siegfried Line as part of the operation to get into Germany. Last year, shortly before I retired from Fox, I went to Indiantown Gap, anybody from Pennsylvania? Here you go, Indiantown Gap, right up the road here, right? And it was for the promotion of a U.S. Army colonel to brigadier general because I had covered him in the war and I was still working for Fox, so we went up to cover his promotion. An incredibly brave man. He's now a major general. And afterwards, we went to a reception up at the Officers Club, and I was invited to go to that, so we did. And an old fella, and I'm old enough to know an old fella, came up to me at the reception on a walker, and he says to me, "Sonny, you were born at Fort Sam Houston in Texas, San Antonio, 1943, October." I said, "Yes, sir. How do you know?" He says, "I delivered you." I said, "I'll tell you something else you don't know, Sonny. You were sired," that was the word he used, "you were sired right here at Indiantown Gap." I said, "Well, how do you know that, sir?" He said, "The division left Fort Niagara and came here in January. We left here in April to go to Fort Sam Houston. Do the math, son, do the math." My folks were still alive, I'd have asked them. I raised my right hand in front of a Marine recruiter on the 29th of December, 1961. And I spent 22 years in the Corps. When Fox hired me to do the documentary series War Stories, and after the attack on 9/11/01, they sent me off to serve as a war correspondent. I've spent nearly my entire life in the company of heroes and great proven leaders. And now that I got 18 grandkids, that's 11 boys and 7 girls, I have my own personal baseball league. And they were all out there last past weekend. And at the end of it, the grandmother and the grandfather said, "Whew, how did we do that?" It's exhausting. Now, I tell my grandkids, and I told my kids this, a hero, the classical definition of a hero, is a person who puts themselves at risk for the benefit of another. It's not someone who hits the baseball and not someone who catches a pass in the end zone, sets a new Olympic record, just climbs a mountain faster than anybody. It is someone who is doing something for someone else at risk to themselves. And my heroes wear combat boots and flak jackets and armored vests and carry a badge and a gun. And I've gotten to see these folks in difficult and dangerous circumstances where they're putting their lives on the line. Now, why are heroes important? Heroes are important because they inspire us to be better than we otherwise might be. Think about that. When I was a kid and a Boy Scout, the last page of the Boy, how many Boy Scouts we got in here? The last page of Boy's Life was always, when I was a kid, it was a monthly magazine, 3 boys in the family. The last page was always a Boy Scout hero who had received the Carnegie Medal for putting his own life at risk, trying, and sometimes succeeding and sometimes failing, to save their life. And so I got inspired right as a kid by heroes. Heroic stuff means a lot to me, and I love keeping company with heroes. One of my goals is to equip my grandkids with what I call leader tools. And I want to just talk a little bit about that because that's, I think, what's really important. There are countless books and manuals about leadership, the qualities of good leaders. The Boy Scouts have 12: trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. 76, and I still remember it, right? The Marine Corps has 14. We had to get 2 more than the Boy Scouts. And I don't have them memorized, but I got them. Dependability, bearing, courage, decisiveness, endurance, enthusiasm, initiative, integrity, judgment, justice, knowledge, tact, selflessness, and loyalty. Loyalty has to be there because the motto of the Marine Corps is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. The Army has 35. Fox News had 53. But checklists don't tell you how to lead. So here's my 5, if you will, leadership-shaped experiments from 76 years of seeing it on battlefields and business and in a beautiful woman's bedroom. I've learned a lot. 5 points. Number 1, a good leader has situational awareness. Number 2, the only way to lead is by example. Number 3, you cannot just motivate, you must inspire. Number 4, you have to persevere in adversity. And number 5, the company you keep will define you. Now, let me go through each one of those. First of all, situational awareness. The definition of situational awareness is knowing what's going on around you and having a plan to deal with it, some of which you may have to modify it several times. I'll also tell you, situational awareness is not a flower that grows in every garden. In fact, it's usually much more obvious in its absence than when you've got it. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. In my new business is we do productions of a show called American Heroes. And so we're looking for sponsors. And I have sponsors send me in proposed commercials they would like to run on the show. I've got one with you, and you may see why we didn't bring them aboard. It's a seniors organization which shall remain nameless. I mean, we didn't hire them on as a sponsor. They don't have a clue about the meaning of situational awareness. I'll give you another example. Betsy and I lead groups to the Holy Land every other year. Last January when we were out there, January before that, we're in the lobby of the David Citadel Hotel, which is the nicest hotel in Jerusalem, in my humble opinion. We always stay there. And we're in the ground floor in the lobby waiting for another couple to come down. We're going to go to dinner with some Israeli friends of mine. She's looking at the elevator, see where the elevators are, and there's like 5 of them. So she's watching them to see which one's coming fastest. I see a tour bus pull into the front of the building, and I see on the side of it the sign, it's a giveaway. I tap her on the shoulder and I say, "That bus is full of gringos." She said, "How do you know that?" I said, "Because I have great situational awareness." I had seen the sign. She didn't. Said on the side of the bus, "Mike Huckabee, Holy Land Tours." It's got to be full of gringos, right? First guy off the bus walks right over to me, looks at me and says, "Did anybody ever tell you you look a lot like Ollie North?" And I said, "Well, it's a good thing I look like Ollie North because I'm sleeping with his wife." Without missing a beat, the guy goes, "You better watch yourself. He's a Marine. He'll kick your butt." And he walks away. And she turns to me and she says, "Didn't see that one coming, did you, Mr. Situational Awareness?" Anybody here from Louisiana? Louisiana? No, nobody, no Louisians. About a month or so ago, I was in Louisiana, and y'all from Texas will understand this. Pulled off the interstate to get a cup of coffee, walked into a fast food place, and there's a sign right as you get off the interstate that says, "Welcome to," and I'll spell it for you, BREAUX, Bridge, crawfish capital of the world. So I walk in and I say to the guy, "How do you pronounce the name of this place? Say it slowly so I get it." And the guy behind the counter goes, "Burger King." There's one thing about troops and cops, that I've been covering all these years is their situational awareness. Let me just show you a little bit about them, and we'll talk about it. They operate and maintain the most sophisticated weapons and equipment ever designed by the hand and mind of man. They've been taught chemistry, physics, ballistics. They can use a weapon like it's part of their body, and their body is weapons. They can take a life or save one because they've been so remarkably well trained. The kid who once wouldn't share a candy bar with his little brother will now give away his last MRE to a hungry Afghan or Iraqi kid. He'll give away his last drop of water to a wounded comrade, and he'll split his ammo with a mate in a firefight. Today's troops are better led, equipped, trained, and more combat experienced than any military force in history. Protecting women and children, part of the world where that's a strange idea, believe me. And despite 18 years of war, budget cuts, and social engineering, we still have the finest military force the world has ever known. These young Americans, when they say, "I've got your back," that's not the slogan of a mattress company. They believe it, they want to do that, they volunteered for it, and I let them tell their stories without telling bad guys things they don't need to know about it. Since 9/11/01, more than 2.8 million young Americans have served in the war, not just in the military. They're the best and bravest of the generation. They've been volunteering to protect ourselves like no other people in the world, and they've offered others the hope of freedom. And so my encouragement to anybody who's got a job is make sure that you give them the opportunity. That they come knocking on the door looking for a good job, you won't find anybody better. I want to just point out to you that dog right there, his name is Dexter. His handler's name is Smitty. I'm going to talk a little bit about them in a minute, but I just wanted you to see him because that dog is the best bomb detector God ever made. It's even better than the stuff that, we spent billions of dollars on. And so, by the way, this is combat baseball. That's a bamboo stick and a stone. Oh, and first base. Anyway, I just wanted you to see him just a little bit because they've all made multiple deployments. They've set aside the rest of their lives. Their families have suffered great uncertainty, and the enemies that they face are vicious, brutal, and often suicidal. Most importantly, everyone's a volunteer. And I really mean what I say, because if you've got any opportunity, hire a vet. I know there's HR people out there in the big industries and all that will say, well, let's see, you might go postal on me. You might have PTS or whatever. Everybody, let me just tell you, if you've been in a serious automobile accident where somebody was seriously hurt, you have PTS. Whether it's PTSD or PTSE enabled, is pretty much up to the way it gets treated. And I say that to you because there are HR people, particularly in big corporations, that say, I'll take the dropout from high school, even though you served in the military, because you may not be my kind of employer. So, U.S. casualties today are much lighter than they were before. That dog is part of one of the casualties because they had to put him down eventually. He got very badly injured by, not an IED, he got shot by a bad guy. Smitty had to be there when they put him down. And Dexter was just a magnificent animal. Every time I got off a helicopter, got out of a vehicle, I would look for Dexter. I want to just show you the kind of response Dexter got among the Marines that I was covering. If you notice on the right-hand side of the screen, that's Dexter. What are these guys doing? They're not high-fiving. They're not doing chest thumps. That's the only dog on the 29 helicopter launches that were done that day at Marja. The only dog. And those guys are in the helo lift that the dog is going with. Instead of doing chest thumps, a lance corporal, this is my proof of my belief, you do not have to be the boss to be a leader. A lance corporal, not the staff sergeant, not the lieutenant, all of whom are in that circle. It's a lance corporal says, hey guys, Dexter and Smitty are coming with us. And they all kneel down to pray for Dexter and Smitty. Now, I tell you that story because that's important to the kind of people that these guys are. These guys can take vulgarity to the level of a new art form. Trust me, I know. I've been there, done that, right? That's why we had to bleep out some of the stuff that was in that RPG shot. By the way, the last few words you utter on this earth ought not begin with F. I'll leave it at that. I say that because that kind of thing represents who we are as a people. These youngsters come from all over America. Just like everybody in this room. They come from families. Very often they came into the military because they wanted to serve their country. And ever since 9/11/01, if you came in the military, it's more than likely you are going to go to the war. Some of these guys have 9 and 10 deployments, 6, 7 months apiece. And the strain on the families is enormous. And I look at those things and I say, that's the kind of people I like to be with, because they are heroes. I want to just show you one more. This is a shot taken on the 6th of April in 2003. I'd been pulled out of Afghanistan and sent over to join the guys that were going up from Kuwait all the way to Baghdad. Baghdad is the smoke you see in the background. The lead element of the Marine attack up the highway, the Army's coming through the desert, and the Marines are driving straight up the road to Baghdad. Baghdad is the smoke pall you see behind them. What they've done is they've spun the vehicles around, because those are soft side vehicles. These are not the armored vehicles we ended up with. These have canvas between them and a bullet. And the lead element is a 250-man Marine Rifle Company, reinforced. And they've been ambushed by a Republican Guards regiment of about 700 bad guys, probably the best Saddam had. And there's a heck of a gunfight going on. And there's all kinds of bullets, 50 calibers, RPGs, mortars. And this Navy corpsman, not a corpsman, by the way, that's a Navy corpsman, who rushes out into the beaten zone between the two forces and starts bringing wounded Marines, and a helicopter lands on the roadway to pick up the casualties. And by now, I've already followed him 2 or 3 times into it, because just before this ambush, I was interviewing him, and he's got the microphone from my lavalier jammed down in his flak jacket. And it's not really my microphone. It's owned by Mr. Murdoch, who owns Fox News. And he's going to want it back. So I'm trying to catch up to the kid. Afterwards, North is running right into the gunfight with that guy. He's 25. I'm, at that point, 50-something. And I look at that young guy, and I say to myself, what a remarkable young man. Remarkably well-trained, incredibly brave. And there's something else. This is the 4th casualty. Unbeknownst to me, on the left-hand side of the screen, you can't see it because I didn't see it till afterwards, is a Reuters news crew that has now come up, and they're panning back and forth as this kid's running back and forth into the gunfight. And as he's bringing this last casualty out, the crew chief is saying, the bird is taking fire. We're going to have more casualties if we don't get the hell out of here. And the skin of a helicopter is just like the skin of a beer, a Coke can. It's very thin. You can stick a pencil through it. And he lays the casualty down on the ramp, and the bird takes off. And as the bird goes, all the gunfire shifts toward the bird, and you can hear very clearly on the microphone he's wearing, the Reuters news crew shout out, "Hey, mate, what did you do that for? Didn't you notice that that was an Iraqi?" Look carefully. That's not a wounded Marine. It's a terrified Iraqi. He's badly wounded. Those are American battle dressings on him. This guy has risked his own life to go out and save the life of an enemy combatant. Now, I look at that and I say, this is phenomenal. What then happens, unfortunately, because of all the expletives, we couldn't use it on air. Because he gestures to them. Didn't you bleepers notice? He was bleeping wounded. That's what we do. We're bleeping Americans. With that gesture with fewer fingers. If he hadn't put all the bleeps in there, we could still be using that, because that's what we do. We're Americans. It's remarkable. Number 2, the only way to lead is by example. You have to model the behavior that you want. You cannot lead from behind. If you're not setting the example, don't expect others to adhere to it. The best leaders that I know are servant leaders. They're servants of those they lead. And if you want a model of that, think about, how did you learn to tie your shoes? Think about it. Somebody knelt down in front of you and showed you how to do it. It was in PowerPoint. I mean, the Boy Scout manual's got all kinds of those knots and things like that. But if somebody shows you, you learn it a lot faster. And that's exactly the way a good leader acts to those he leads. You got to ask yourself, what's more important? Is it what I say or what I do? Well, in my experience, both in business and in the Marines, it's far more important what I do rather than what I say. And you have to, in other words, walk the walk. You have to live it. You can't expect others to do things that you will not do or cannot do. And that goes for business as well as battlefields. You don't have to be the boss to be the leader. I told you that about the story. Lance Corporal. Here's Smitty showing up. And I'll give you another example. When the lieutenant sees the sergeant from explosive ordnance running, the lieutenant will run with him, if he's half as smart as he'd like to be. Yeah. The best leaders I know are selfless, not selfish. And to me, that means a lot. That's why my business did so well. That's why I think I did so well as a Marine. Number 3, don't just try to motivate, but inspire. You know, Patton's comment, and I did not know the man. My dad served under him. My dad went off to war as a second lieutenant, came home as a lieutenant colonel. My mom used to ask my brothers and me, how long have you been a captain? About 5 years, Mom. I don't know what's wrong with you boys. Your father was a captain for 5 weeks. I said, Mom, it was World War II. You boys have all been in a war. What's wrong with you? Patton's comment, quote, convince others that it's in their interest to do what you need done. I disagree with that. You can inspire others to do what needs to be done by setting the example. But my experience says your competence and your courage are very, very important when you're leading others. And you got to be competent. You got to know your stuff. You know, part of that is knowing your God-given gifts and talents. Jake would not be doing all the great things he's doing with Pastime if you weren't competent to get it done. And knowing your strengths and weaknesses is important when you go out looking for a job. I tell this to veterans all the time. The ASVABs test that's given to a veteran, to people coming in the service. Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery is called, based on a Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory. But it gives the military a guideline as to where this guy is going to do his best. They don't always put him in that job. At one point when I was a battalion operations officer, I had a guy named McGinty. And McGinty had been in trouble the whole doggone time he'd been in the Marine Corps. He'd been a private 3 times. Made it all the way to Lance Corporal one time. And finally, the master gunner sergeant brought in and put in front of me the kid's ASVAB score. They've got him as a machine gunner down in a rifle company. Admin score, 95. Infantry skills, 2 out of 100. We made him a machine gunner. Yeah. Brought him up to the operations office. He figured out the first IBM computers to be deployed were deployed with my battalion. Ever before. They'd never done this before. It was 1978. And McGinty had it figured out before the tech rep from IBM could do it. He was that good in admin. He retired as a Marine gunnery sergeant, by the way, with a Navy Marine Corps medal for risking his life, saving the life of somebody else. So we all have strengths and weaknesses. Knowing them, I have some, you have some, we all do, right? Know what they are. Learn all about your chosen endeavor, even from the mistakes you make. You know, what's that expression? Experience is the best teacher. Well, bad experience is the best teacher of all, because you got to know, don't do that again. Show those you lead you can make mistakes, just don't repeat them. Number 4, persevere in adversity. I think I know a little bit about that. Life is not fair, but as a leader, you have to be. I was a boxer at the Naval Academy. At one point, Rocky Marciano was the world champ, of course, came to referee some fights, and at the end of it, I said, you gave that fight to the kid who got knocked down once in each round, 9 minutes of boxing, 3 3-minute rounds. I said, everybody else, gave it to the guy who knocked him down. He says, yeah, I know. He says, but I used to get knocked down a lot too. So I give the fight to the guy who gets back up and throws another punch. And there's a lot to be said for that. Without embarrassing anybody, because how many of you had a tough time starting out in business? I did. Yeah, but you persevered. And coming through that is a great lesson. And those ideas that you formulate in that kind of a process are incredibly valuable. Tenacity and strength of character are essential qualities, regardless of what your business is. You should never play the game of shoulda, woulda, coulda, because what might have been or might have wanted to happen isn't a game anybody can win. And I've been, even guys that have been badly wounded, I go out to the hospital and see these guys a lot, and I remind them of that. So finally, on this business of adversity, one of the things that I try to do is I try every day to say these 5 words to someone, but you got to mean them. How can I help you? How can I help you? But you got to mean it, because unfulfilled expectations are the greatest cause of anger on the planet Earth, whether it's a husband and wife, parent and child. I try very, very hard to make sure that my grandkids know that I'm not going to react to them like I reacted to their parents. You with me? I mean, I'd love to be able to tell you I've never raised my voice to my kids and my wife. I'd be lying. But I don't raise my voice at our grandkids, because I'm trying to be an example to them. But I do have a great Clint Eastwood The government issued me a new knee last year, so I couldn't ski, which I love to do. But I became the chauffeur. Okay, 8-year-old ski school in the Suburban, right? So I'm shuttling kids back and forth to ski lessons and snowboard lessons and snowball fights and all the rest of it. And as I walk back in after one of those trips, dropping kids off, one of the little girls is boom, 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 boom. That's a ski place. The carpets are that thick, right? I catch her at the bottom. She's not hurt. Her ego is hurt. But I see at the top of the stairs, there's one of the boys. And I walk up to, you just pushed your sister down the stairs. You apologize right now. Kid looks up at me, and they call me by my first name, Colonel. Colonel, that's not my sister, that's my cousin. You go get your father right now, whoever he is, and bring him right here. So I try like the Dickens to persevere in adversity and show them how you can do that. Last point, the company you keep really matters. At the bookends of this whole thing, situational awareness at the front end, this is probably the beginning and the end of the story. You can just do it with these two. The company you keep really does matter. The kind of people you keep company with whom you associate, will define who you are. If you keep company with people who are faithfully keep their commitments, they don't just talk about integrity, they live it. If you keep company with people who know where they're going and why they are going there, my greatest gift is to keep company with those who hold me accountable, encourage me in failure, and admonish me to humility. I've learned that associating with those who serve others in business or on battlefields is a lot easier to look yourself in the mirror in the morning. So I ask you, what do you want as your leader legacy? You want to be rich? You want to be famous? How do you want to be remembered? If I was a member of NIADA, I'd want to be recalled as a good, honest person with whom to do business. I wasn't joking about the number of used cars I bought, because the people with whom I did business were honest, hardworking people of integrity. As a neighbor and valued member of my community, here's what I am. Husband of 1, father of 4, grandfather of 18. When I'm gone, I can take nothing with me, but I want those I leave behind to say that he showed me how to fight the good fight, how to finish the race, and how to keep the faith. So when my kids turn 14, and now my grandkids some of them are 14, I give them a box. It's a large box at their birthday. And on the box is a note that says, if you learn to use everything in this box, you'll never be hungry, you'll never be lost, and you need fear nothing, and I will show you how. They open the box, and there's, first thing is the Bible. And for the guys, it's open to Proverbs 31. If you don't know what I'm talking about, when you get back to your room tonight, check it out. It's how we ended up with all these kids and grandkids. Proverbs 31, wife. And the next thing they take is a lensatic compass and a map sheet, and the map sheet just happens to be my wife's farm on the Shenandoah River. It's right off the Appalachian Trail. That's the backyard. The front yard's the Shenandoah. And just like in the Marines, I've got ammo boxes painted different colors and different numbers on them around the place. And I take the map sheet. I'll show you how to use that compass on it. And the last thing that they'll look at in there is what they all want to do first. 20-gauge shotgun, pump gun, Remington 870, 20-gauge. And I'll show you how to safely use it after I show you how to take it apart and put it back together, after I show you how to clean it. Then I'll show you how to safely use it. And if you learn to use all those things, and I'll show you how, you won't be lost, you won't feel anything, and you'll never be hungry because you can go out and get dinner. Preferably not one of my wife's cows. Now, so I got one of our grandkids is now in college. And I told him when he went off to his freshman year, I said, George, when at some point somebody's going to put you in a car and take you someplace you know you shouldn't go and ask or invite you or urge you to do something you shouldn't do. So here's what you do. If you're in that car and you'd have no choice at that point, just lean over to the driver and say, my grandfather is a United States Marine. If he finds out about this, he'll hunt us down and kill us all. Turn around and take me back to the dorm. That's very simple. All the girls who are old enough, I've taught hand-to-hand combat. I mean, I know the crazy stuff that's out there that happens on college campuses. I can assure you they know how to stop it. And if you're keeping company with the right people, it won't happen. So I said, right from the very beginning, the 3P rule in our family, 3 Ps. Are you going to be a prey, a predator, or a protector? Pick one, and pick the right one now. And that's when they're in the midst of doing something really stupid. The 3M rule. The 3M rule, if it's bad for your mind, your muscles, or your morals, you don't do it. 3M rule. And so, these are simple little things to do with little kids, but it works. It works. We've been blessed. We've got 4 magnificent kids. They found beautiful, terrific mates. And now this 18 grandkids. Obviously, they're spending, by the way, many of them have October birthdays, just like mine. Just figure that one out. What's the weather like in February in Virginia? Yeah. So what I'm doing now, somebody asked me, what are you doing now? I just finished a book. I've got some of the other books out there. I've got a little production company. I just wanted to show, by the way, I am shameless self-promotion. I'm looking for sponsors. Can we just run one of those little promo pieces?
It was between 5 and 5:30 on that June day. I was going over on Croton Road. There were 3 stop signs. At the throat of the T was a lake, and I see a blur go in front of me, and I could see it was an automobile.
I hear this engine racing, and it was just flying really, really loud. The guardrail sort of served as a ramp, and it launched the car up in the air, and it just hung there for a little while.
That was so loud. Call 911.
And then you could see the car start to sink.
I was in the water, I would guess, before it stopped rippling.
He beelined out there. He certainly didn't think about much.
I just knew that it was life and death, and there could be no hesitation.
All right, hurry up and get them.
And I had his head against the top of the car. The water had gotten so high that the water was going in his mouth and coming out his nose.
I swam inside the car, and it was really murky, and you couldn't see much in there. Water was almost to the top inside the car.
With my right hand, I was trying to get his hands off the steering wheel. He was not a big man. Boy, he was gripping that steering wheel.
He was still trying to drive the car. He was just checked out.
He was going to die. The intensity of the moment and the responsibility I had, but the adrenaline was coming out my ears. I said to myself, you're never going to forgive yourself. You got to save this guy.
All right, guys, let's just pray.
I'm, as I said, looking for sponsors. Thank you all very much for the opportunity to be with you. I truly do believe that what you are doing is the right thing. I hope that you have good meetings up on Capitol Hill. I've never had a good one up there, I'll be honest with you. Well, God bless you. Thank you.